There we go. So hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Cooper Luke, in case you're not familiar with me. Marie is off on an assignment as our new Associate Executive Director. As I'm sure you guys are aware, she has accepted that position. So that's why I'm here today. I've worked here at the State Charter School Board with Marie for just a little over a year now. And this is my first director's meeting that I get to run, so I hope it goes well. I do have a letter that Marie wanted me to read to you because unfortunately neither Marie or our new executive director, Paul Kramer, were able to be here today. And they just wrote up a little letter for me to read to you. Because they couldn't be here. And I do want you to know at the outset, it is their letter. They wrote it and they were very kind. So here we go. It says, greetings, esteemed Utah Charter School All-Stars. We hope this message finds you thriving and brimming with the excitement of a new chapter in our charter school saga. Today, our Orchestra of Education has a few key players on different stages. Dr. Paul Kramer is out and about navigating the challenges of hybrid working while learning the charter school landscape of Utah. Miss Marie Stephenson is navigating the intricate landscape of the legislature representing our team at the Capitol today. And let's not forget the invaluable Miss Lisa Cooper, who is graciously lending a hand today in leading our charter directors meeting. While we wish we could be there with you, please know we have been hard at work. The Utah State Charter School Board has outlined key priorities, a roadmap, if you will, for the next several years. We will dive deeper into this over the next few directors' meetings, but would love to share a few high-level points today. So they have a list here of the priorities of the Utah State Charter School Board. 1, building a strong and capable organization and charter school community. 2, increasing innovation and choice in public schools. 3, monitoring fidelity of charter agreement performance measures, financial health, and governance. 4, collaborating effectively with the Utah State Board of Education, charter associations, and the legislature. 5, forming productive partnerships with authorized schools. 6, developing customized performance measures embedded in bilateral charter school agreements for each authorized charter school. 7, ensuring that the executive director has the necessary resources to achieve the State Charter School Board's strategic goals. As we navigate this intricate symphony of priorities, rest assured that Dr. Kramer, Marie, and the rest of the staff are fully committed to working hand in hand with each of you. We anticipate creating an environment where innovation thrives, choices abound, and each student receives an education tailored to their unique needs. Stay tuned for updates, invitations, and the opportunity to join us on this exciting journey. Let's build a future where Utah's charter schools shine as beacons of excellence. Warm regards, Paul and Marie, SCSB Executive and Associate Executive Directors. So with that, please know that they have assured me Marie has assured me she intends to be back with us next month, and we're hoping that Dr. Kramer will be here as well to say hello in virtual person. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn the time over to Shannon Greer. She just has a little thing she wants to talk with you about, and I'm going to turn it over to her to go ahead and take care of that.
Thank you. And if I have the ability to share my screen?
You should, yes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm excited to join you today. I wanted to share with you a little bit about next month's training. And it is scheduled for December 11th. The next time we meet together in our directors meeting, we have arranged for Allison Levine and Mary Lynn Durrington. Allison is a professor at the university, excuse me, at Utah State University, and she and her and Dr. Darrington are going to be joining us to talk to you about actionable feedback and conducting teacher evaluations. Last spring, when we looked at the feedback we received from many of you on training that you would like to receive, this was one that was there several times. And so we've arranged for them to and do this training. They've been working on it for about a month now, but they want to make sure that they're hitting your exact needs and the concerns that you have, or maybe some of the challenges you're facing. So they've asked if I would please get some feedback from you that they can incorporate into their training next month. So if you will take a moment and click on this QR code and then leave your feedback on that, I will share that with them and they'll be able to use that. Then in conjunction with that training, we are going to offer a book study, separate from the director's meeting, of course, but this will be a book study in January where she and Dr. Darrington will walk through the actionable feedback text that we will present, that we will share with you, and have an opportunity to collaborate with charter school directors and charter school those who might be in that role in your schools. So if you will please click on this QR code, answer their 2 questions, and then if you're interested in participating in the book study, if you will leave the email address for either you or whomever in your building you would like, we will be in contact and make sure that they have all the supplies they need. Thank you. I appreciate you giving me a moment to just to share what the next December's training will be.
No problem. And thank you, Shannon, for that. All right. We are just a few minutes ahead of time. I do have some in case you missed it, but it's going to take a little bit more than 3 minutes. So I'm hoping that Nathan and Jonathan, I do believe they're both here. Nathan and Ankh, I think, I'm not sure, he can correct me as needed, and Jonathan Frey are here. Nathan is the STEM coordinator and Jonathan is the CTE coordinator, and they are going to be talking about CCR and STEM course resources for us today. So you
Thanks,
guys,
Lisa.
if you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah, if you can hear me, thanks so much, Lisa. I appreciate it. My apologies for having a cough drop in my mouth while I'm speaking. As you can hear, I'm a little bit of a frog this morning. I feel okay, but my voice is not in a great space. So my colleague Jonathan and I have created some resources with a team of stakeholders from across the state associated with college and career readiness. And so we have these course resources. We just wanted to continue to make sure that everyone is aware of, and that you know that they're available to you to use in whatever way you think is the most effective for you. So I'm putting a link to these course resources in the chat now. So this link will take you to a web page that has not only some standards, some strands and standards for a college and career readiness course, which is a high school course that's targeting 9th through the 12th grade students, but also a couple of other resources that I wanted to point out that are within those standards, because this looks different than a lot of other sets of standards that we have in other subjects. So if you scroll down to the second page, what you'll see, it says course resources. And there's 2 links. One's to the resources by strand standard, and one to the performance tasks, descriptions and rubrics. And if you click on those 2 resources, it'll allow you to pull up a Google folder, which has instructional resources aligned with each of the strands of that course. So that as you're building out a college and career readiness course, or maybe you already have one that you want to help your educators see resources to, you can use these as you see fit. And for that second link, what it'll take you to if I can get back to the original page, is our performance tasks and descriptors. So as you all are probably aware, there's a lot of research and kind of community opinion that cognitively rigorous experiences for students not only include more retention for that information, but are also more engaging and kind of support a larger range of learners in being able to engage in them. And so what you'll find when you go to this college and career readiness performance task Google Sheet is that there are a number of performance tasks aligned with the tabs along the bottom of this sheet that are also aligned to the strands and standards for this college and career readiness course. So for each one, you'll also notice that the kind of rubrics that we build associated with them are aligned to the portrait of a graduate characteristics. So you'll see them identified at the left, where it says indicators, there's wellness, communication, lifelong learning, and personal growth. These align with our portrait of a graduate characteristics and the strands and standards that were built for this course. So as you kind of filter through each of these tabs, it'll give you a kind of starting place to be able to build performance assessments associated with the entirety of that college and career readiness course. So Jonathan, maybe you want to talk a little bit about kind of the structure of the standards and anything else that you want to add about the college and career readiness course. This course lives in teaching and learning, but it was structured based on the CTE strands and standards and performance indicators work that they've done in the past. And I'll go back to this page.
And a large part of the focus of this one is we were looking at the need of how to prepare our students to transition from high school to the next step. And that's really what we're looking at, is what is that next step? If it's a university program, a tech college program, or even a lot of our students that decide that they're not ready to move on, they want to go and start a career in something. And so that's a large part of the purpose of this, is to help students to start really thinking of that transition process, help them do some of the research and prepare them so they can make the right decision. And so part of it is trying to adjust to that problem of how many of our students move into college and that freshman year they fail out because they were not adequately prepared in some of that knowledge. So that's kind of the purpose of a large part of this course. As you look at the different strands and standards that are in this course, where Nate's at right there is really looking at what exactly would a student need to be prepared to make the right decisions. And of course, this is a course, it is a 9th through 12th course. So really it's designed to fit into what you as an LEA decide is what your students need. So there's flexibility in that sense. It does tie to concurrently with some freshman level courses that we have, the student success type courses at our universities level. There's several across the state. And so there is that option where like I know at UVU, it is a requirement for the freshmen to come in and take a course. This is, again, if you've got seniors taking this course, and they plan on going to UVU or wherever else that offer that same type of course, it's helping them, again, get advanced into that area. But really, again, it's looking at that. What's the return on investment ideas that they're looking at as they're making decisions, really looking at the process, especially for a lot of our students who, if they are looking at going to our tech colleges or a university, they don't know the process, or if their parents have never done it, this helps them see the process. It gets them prepared. So it's not, we're trying to remove some of those barriers that potentially, that if that's where our students want to move to, they can do that, as well as the financial opportunities they may potentially have if that's what if they want to look between scholarships and financial aid. As well as if you go down to the next one there, the strand 3 is really looking at what does it mean when they move into that next level of being an adult, and how can they be successful in navigating that new world as well. And so it's helping, again, that transition through that. And then of course that final one is the things that help them get prepared, not only for entrance requirements, for job requirements, the resume, the cover letters. Again, we already do those in other courses. This helps it just put everything into one course that will help them through that process. Also, I don't know if any of you were in that step. I mean, the first time you filled out a W-2, many of us had to do it by ourselves. We may not have had a parent there to guide us. So again, familiarizing our students to be able to make those decisions when they go through that transition. Again, it's just helping them through the process is really the process that we've created through this course to move our students and help them be successful. And again, that's the high level, is helping our students be successful. And so that's really the center goal of all this.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So just to underscore a couple of things that Jonathan mentioned, we partnered with institutions of higher education in creating this content. And so it is aligned to some of the courses that they offer. I think we now have 6 of the 8 public institutions of higher education that have a concurrent enrollment experience aligned to this course. So that's a possibility if it's something that works for your community. And we also worked with our CTE specialist who was in charge of college and career awareness and financial literacy, so that this course fits in a kind of course progression from middle school into high school that is coherent with the college and career awareness expectation that students are taking in middle school. And it fits like interfacing next to the financial literacy expectations of the course that the student takes in high school. So we tried to make sure that it was as coherent as possible with the systems that it was built within. If you have any questions about these resources or want more information about the concurrent enrollment aspect or anything in those regards, Jonathan and I can throw our emails into the chat, and feel free to shoot us a line. You'll also find this course on both the CTE webpage as well as the early college webpage. If you lose this link through the chat for some reasons, in the early college webpage, it's under courses, and then you'll find it at College and Career Readiness Course Standards. So, Jonathan, any final thoughts on CCR before we move on to some other stuff?
Yeah, any questions from the group that may have us that we can answer real quick right now?
Yeah. Okay, seeing none immediately, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll continue to answer them or shoot our email, shoot an email our way rather. Jonathan, if you want to throw your email into the chat, that would be great. So I'm also here with another one of my colleagues, Isaac Pitcher, who's the STEM Endorsement Incentive Program Specialist. And we wanted to also remind you about some exciting things that are happening in the STEM Endorsement Incentive Program space, or what we call the STEM EIP. This program is allocated $1.2 million per year. That is all flow-through money straight to teachers who have a STEM endorsement. Now, to be clear, or who are acquiring or who have acquired a STEM endorsement, rather. When I say STEM endorsement, I don't just mean the elementary STEM endorsement. I mean any of a number of endorsements that fall within the STEM area. So this is including science, it's including a number of CTE endorsements, and it's including mathematics and a number of others. I think we have over 50 endorsements that qualify for the program. And there's 2 opportunities within the program that we are excited to show you about. I'm going to put a slideshow that has the kind of program specifics in the chat. And so the 2 circumstances in which teachers can make use of these funds, one is a reimbursement and one is an incentive. The reimbursement opportunity is after teachers have taken a course to pursue for some STEM endorsement, any of the qualifying endorsements, and you can find those qualifying endorsements on our FAQ page, which is linked in the slide deck. Isaac, if you wouldn't mind throwing the FAQ link into the chat as well. You can get the qualifying endorsements on that FAQ, but a teacher can receive full reimbursement for course expenses up to $1,500 in secondary or $500 in elementary endorsements. in order to pursue any of those qualifying endorsements. So in almost all cases, this pays for the entirety of the course experiences that are necessary to achieve a qualifying endorsement. Additionally, we now have money, or we're now allocating some of that money, since we scaled the program up, to provide incentives to educators who achieve those endorsements. So not only can it help educators in their process of getting to being endorsed, but it also rewards them for getting across the finish line. Effectively, we're trying to incentivize folks getting to the end of that process and not just building their professional learning, because we know the teachers that are endorsed in their content areas have better outcomes for their students. And so each year, that $1.2 million is totally flow through funds to educators from across the state in one of those two circumstances. So we, during this most recent fiscal year 23, we reimbursed for over $750,000 in teacher courses across the state, which accounts for over 650 courses and over 350 educators that were kind of engaged in this process. The incentives were in the range of about $500,000, which is good news for us, because it means we've scaled the program big enough that we're starting to spend down some of the carry forward funds that we've had over the past couple of years. And we're excited that we're able to kind of touch teachers from across geographies and communities across the state. So the process for acquiring this money is kind of laid out within this slide deck. But ultimately, all you need to do is a teacher gives you the information or participates in a cohort that is a part of this program. And then you kind of go into the Qualtrics survey and check off that this teacher has indeed done the things that they say they have. They provided their transcript, they passed with a C or greater the course in question. And then we allocate money to you as an LEA, and you give that money to the teacher. So you can, going through this slide deck, you can see the kind of talking points at the kind of higher level, but because our time is short, I won't go through the specifics of all these things. As I mentioned, there's this teacher pathway where you can be the administrator of these funds, but there's also the cohort pathway, which allows you as an LEA to run a cohort of teachers through this process, and then they never have to pay anything. You just incur the costs as the LEA, and then we will reimburse you whatever costs you've experienced in helping incentivize these teachers to participate. So you can get more information at this bit.ly. It's also linkable in the slideshow, I think. So feel free to get into those slides. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Isaac and we can help illuminate whatever way we can to kind of incentivize more teachers to participate in this program. So I think we have 2 minutes left if anyone else has any questions. Okay, so seeing none, Isaac, if you want to throw your email into that chat. Oh, you got it. You're on top of it. Thank you. Isaac, what did I miss? Anything else that we needed to let them know that I forgot about?
I think you covered it. I would encourage everybody to look through the FAQ, and all of the details about the program will be in there.
Excellent. All right. Thanks all for your time today. Again, my name is Nathan Ock. I'm the STEM coordinator and also the PCBL specialist at the Utah State Board of Education. And we appreciate your time and look forward to getting to collaborate on either of these two opportunities. Thanks all.
Thank you, Nathan and Jonathan. Good information. Thanks for being here today. All right. Well, next up we have Holly. And I'm not sure how to pronounce Holly's last name. I'll let her go ahead and do that. She's the training specialist for the School Land Trust program. So Holly, whenever you're ready, go ahead and jump on.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Holly Carouse. And as she said, I am the training specialist at the School Children's Trust section. I am going to put the link to my slide show in the chat so you can follow along. I also have resources listed at the end. So just a few reminders. We want to celebrate. We have 98.2% of all schools in the state that have completed the October 20th deadline items. And those are telling us whether your Charter Trust Land Council is your governing board or elected, council members, and principal assurance. And as we are looking at our data, I believe there are only 4 charter schools that have not completed these requirements. And so we will continue to reach out to you to see if you need any help or if you have any questions. We would love to help you get these completed sooner than later. I did want to go over times when a school land trust plan needs amendments. I did discuss this in October, but with these plans, they are fluid and things happen, things will not be available. So just a reminder that not all plans need amendments. Am I even sharing my screen? I am not. I apologize for that. Let me go back. Okay, because there is this really cute slide with our purple elephant celebrating that I put together specifically through AI just for you. So here we go. I apologize for that. Not all plans need amendments. An amendment will always need to be submitted for a new goal or a new spending category. And as you are creating these amendments at the council level, remember that the amendment must be approved by all levels before the school may use the funds that are consistent with the amendment. Some examples of a time when plans have needed amendments are a change in a current goal, creation of a new goal, significant changes in spending in a category, moving spending from one category to another within an existing goal. And that could be that salaries and benefits, that expenditure will be changing to books and technology expenditures. And then anytime spending is moved between goals. And so like I mentioned, there is an approval process that is similar to the approval process that the school land trust plans go through. And first, it does start with the Trust Land Council members, where they are creating and voting to approve the amendment to the school land trust plan. Now, these amendments are subject to a majority vote. Notes must be made of the date the amendment, notes must be made of the date the amendment was approved, the number of votes that were for or against the amendment, as well as any members that are absent. Second step is when the Trust Land Council takes that amendment to the governing board for their approval. And then if the amendment was not entered on the school land trust reporting website prior to going to the governing board, it does need to be entered on that school land trust reporting website before the LEA can do the approval. And then the LEA will review and approve the amendment. And then the last step is that the School Children's Trust section does the final review and the finalization. And then again, a note, just please remember that once the amendment is finalized, that's when those funds may be used as approved. And then I wanted to do another reminder for the timelines and where you should be. So I do have the 2 separate ones. The first one, if your charter board is serving as the Trust Land Council, there are some action items for November, December, January, and February. And then for charter boards that are not serving as the Trust Land Council, there are also some action items that need to be taken care of. And then all of the resources I have listed, these are hyperlinked. So this one is a how-to video for adding an amendment. This quickly goes over the plan amendment approval process. These website requirements, those are for trust land councils that are separate from the governing board. This next one is a link to the reporting website where you log in for your school land trust plans. We have a link for the public reports and then the 2 different timelines. And then as always, our contact information. Before I go, are there any questions that I can answer for you? Okay. Like I said, if you do have anything, here are our contact. You can always email us or give us a call. Thank you.
Lisa, you are muted.
Thank you. So sorry about that. Oh my goodness. Okay. So our next presenter is going to be Holly Bell, but we are a little bit ahead of time. And Holly, are you on yet by chance? Okay, I'm not hearing Holly, so we're going to go ahead and jump into our in case you missed it for November. So I'm going to share my screen really fast. All right, so in case you missed it for November 2023, we have a lot of things going on. So I'm going to try and summarize these for you. You will get a copy of this when the slides or when the video is published. Marie will send out this slide deck to you as well. So like I said, just to highlight it today, this slide is about the state auditors, and the state auditor's office has prepared an audit alert document, and this was done in response to it noting some widespread non-compliance with the public notice requirements of Utah Code 524-203. And these requirements, the 5 areas that they've noticed for non-compliance were that the entity should be properly listed on the public meeting notice website. The entity should publicly post pending and approved minutes of public meetings. Entities must make an audio recording of open meetings available to the public for listening within 3 business days. Entities must list the names of all board members absent or present in the pending and approved minutes, and entities must post the name, phone number, and email of all board members on the PMN website. So in an effort to make their publications more accurate and useful to their intended audiences, the auditor's office is inviting individuals who work for local government entities to go ahead and read the draft. There is a URL for that draft that you will get when you get the slide deck. But if you like to go ahead and read that, and then the comment period will last for 30 days. And the end of that 30 days is actually going to be December 1st of 2023. And as you can see there, those comments should be submitted to Parker Van Erden. All right, next one is some free MANT de-escalation trainings that are going to be held throughout spring of 2024. These trainings are going to be for both new certifications and recertifications. And it's for any school personnel who are in need of de-escalation training. And the action is, if you are interested in the new certification training, there are a couple of registration links. There's a different one depending on whether you're getting a new certification or a recertification. So just be aware of those when and if you decide to go ahead and register for those. And questions on these, you can see the two contacts are for the training itself would be Ashley Lauer. And for the registration, if you're having issues with that, Tina Morandi. All right. Next is from USBE, and it's about in an effort to achieve the statewide goal for the 70% of third graders reading on grade level by 2027, which was part of SB 127. Leaders will be participating in a required 2-year professional learning cohorts, connecting the science of reading with the principles of change management. Ed Direction is going to provide the required trainings for this, and the number of participants from your LEA will vary depending on some circumstances that are listed there. But one thing to keep in mind is that it is highly recommended that all required participants in this from an LEA attend the same cohorts if at all possible. Additional information with regard to this is that elementary principals, principal supervisors, and literacy specialists are required to participate in this by 2026. And they want you to encourage your LEA literacy directors, principals, supervisors, and elementary principals to review a flyer. I do not have that flyer. It does say that it is attached, but I did look and I didn't see it. So there is contact information for Denise there. And if you want to get the hold of that flyer, go ahead and contact her for that. But again, they're strongly recommending that for these cohorts, all the people from your LEA attend the training together. All right. The next one, Better Days, has launched its 4th annual She Started It All for Us student art contest. And this is a great way for kids learning about women in Utah history. To learn about women in Utah history, and they would love for the charter school teachers to consider making this class an assignment. This is for students in grade 4 through 12, and they can submit an original art piece about a woman in Utah history for a chance to win a cash award and other prizes. And submissions are open for that through January 22nd of 2024. And as always, the winning art will be displayed at the student event at the Capitol. And according to Governor Deidre Henderson, it's a fun opportunity to get some recognition for the students. The next one is the next one is from the USBE, and it's has released the school report cards. And the Utah school report cards, they allow the parents to examine school performance indicators such as achievement and growth. And reviewing the school report card for your community school is a great way to learn more about the school's strengths and areas that they are working to improve. And that is a quote from the state superintendent of public instruction, Sydney Dixon. And we want to encourage everyone to review this interactive online tool designed to support transparency and promote continuous improvement. Those interested primarily in state data are also encouraged to visit USBE's Data Gateway, where they can find information on individual assessments, data for grade levels, graduation rates, and other resources. And then there's some information for parents who want to do so. Okay, next we have November 30th. We just have some dates, I'm sorry, from USBE of some important reporting dates. So on November 30th, the audit report is due. That should be sent to school finance, and a file with it also needs to be on file with the Office of the State Auditor, and you can see the address where you can do that there. December 15th, if any of you use indirect costs, those proposals need to be in by that date. And LEAs who are electing to do so need to complete the indirect cost rate proposal module. And in UPEFS. And all sections must be certified by the appropriate finance authority at that LEA. And you also need an organizational chart covering the fiscal year 2023. And LEAs not electing to recover or indirect costs, they also need to make sure that they notify school finance that they will not be doing so. And then December 31st, if any of you have the federal single audit done, that report is due by that date. The due date, if not submitted with the audit report on November 30th, a federal single audit is required for all LEAs or entities expending $750,000 or more of federal funds in a fiscal year. And then the deferred revenue report is due on December 31st. And that report does the deferred unearned revenue should be filled out completely in the UPEF's deferred revenue module, and school finance staff will reconcile the deferred revenue amounts in your AFR and the audited government funds financial statements. So deferred revenue must be certified by the appropriate finance authority. I am going to stop there for a moment because we are back on time, and I'm running a little bit late, and I want to get Holly started if she is ready. So Holly Bell is going to be speaking about Equity Labs. So go ahead, Holly.
Thank you, Lisa. It's good to see a bunch of names. I see a few faces. I won't take too long. I just wanted to, oh, hi, Tyler. Good to see you. I wanted to tell you about the Equity Labs, and I have sent an invitation to many of you, not to all of you, because this particular Equity Lab that we're doing is for ATSI schools who have been identified for the students who are English learners group. I sent Marie an email with the list of the schools that were identified. If you didn't see that email come through, we have already had one Equity Lab. It's our virtual Equity Lab last Monday. And I don't know if some of you are online who attended that. And yes, I will tell you a little bit more about what it is. And so we have one more on November 30th, and that will be at 12:30 at the USBE that is specifically for charter schools. We recognize that you have unique communities, unique needs, even amongst each other, but you also have unique challenges that you share. Now, what we'll be focusing on in the Equity Lab, it's an interactive session where we provide you with your unique data for your school, specific to students who are multilingual learners, and you'll have some time to review the data and then also go through a force field analysis and make an action plan on how to address the needs of those students. And for me, it's one of my most enjoyable initiatives that I do, because it's so important to gather a team together from your LEA and spend focused time looking at your data and really digging into what is going on behind these disparities that we might see, what opportunities do we have to address them to better support our students who are learning English. So I just wanted to invite you. And if you're wondering if you're on the list, I gave that list to Marie. I just emailed her a few minutes ago. And then also may have received an email. Now, if you want to sign up, just email me directly. Don't worry about the Sign Up Genius that I sent you before. And I can put my email in the chat. Oh, it just did something really bizarre. So, hold on one second. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the Student Family Rights Specialist at the Utah State Board of Education. And I just wanted to throw out there to you that whenever you have questions about Section 504, Title IX, Title VI, educational equity, please feel free to reach out to me. And I also provide training. In fact, I'm providing a training on supporting LGBTQIA students and the laws around that on, let's see, I think on Wednesday with the Utah Charter Association, I want to say. So it's Wednesday at noon with the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. So if any of you are involved in that, I'll be providing a presentation on that on Wednesday. And just feel free to reach out, and if you need any assistance or training, things, for anything for me, I'm happy to help. And so, do you have any questions about Equity Labs or anything else while I'm here? Okay, now we're going to try again to put my email in the chat. Okay, so just reach out anytime. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'll let you get back to your agenda.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate you being here.
Sure thing. Take care.
Okay. All right, we're once again a little bit ahead of schedule, and our next presenter, it doesn't look like is on yet, so we'll go back to our in case you missed it for a minute, and hopefully she'll be jumping on really soon. All right. Okay, so again, from USBE, we have the Utah State Charter School, the Utah State Board of Education is seeking public feedback on the Utah K-12 Comprehensive School Counseling Program model. They're asking for that input from all K-12 public school stakeholders, and the feedback will be collected through December 1st of 2023. If you would like to provide some feedback, please make sure you review the current draft of the Utah K-12 Comprehensive School Counseling Program model. And then it says it is attached to the email. Not sure where the attachment is, but hopefully you guys have received an email on that and you can look at it. Or if you need help finding it, let me know and I can do that. And then there's a voluntary feedback survey that you can take. And then for more questions about that, please go ahead and contact Bethany Maker. All right, next. Okay, so this one is about the data released by the Board of Education regarding the enrollment in Utah's public education system. I think we've all heard that there has been a decrease in there. It was a 0.3% decrease from the previous year. And for this year, the largest decreases were in student counts were in the elementary grades, with kindergarten showing the 3% decline and first grade showing a 4.4% decline from the last year. Now, in contrast to this, the charter schools continue to show growth by added 513 students, which was a 1% increase from the prior year. And charter schools now account for over 79,000 students in the public school population, which is 12% of the statewide student enrollment. And also some interesting facts: the number of students who are considered economically disadvantaged grew this past year by 1.2%. They now make up 30% of the total student population. And the number of students with disabilities also increased pretty significantly. It marked a 12.9% change. And students requiring English language learning services remained approximately the same at 9% of the student population. And the Alpine School District continues to be the largest district in the state. And then K-3 literacy curriculum. So the Curriculum Review Committee has completed its fall 2023 review, and the team has updated its curriculum list. The programs are organized by comprehensive, core, supplemental, and intervention, and in alphabetical order. So I can let you look further into that, but they did have, as a reminder, the RIMS, which is the Recommended Instructional Materials System list, has other state code requirements, such as keeping programs in the database for 5 years. And due to many programs in the system being submitted and reviewed prior to the SB 127 passing, it is not updated to meet these new requirements, which is why the K-3 elementary literacy curriculum list for Utah has been created and shared for you. And data recently released by the USBE indicates that 77% of enrolled Utah kindergartners have decided to take advantage of the full day kindergarten options. So as of October 1st of 2023, 39,911 Utah families have opted for full day kindergarten for their students, and only 23% of students enrolled in the half-day option. And we have a quote here: "We have seen a great demand for full-day kindergarten in Utah, and we are glad that the state has invested in providing this option for Utah families." And that was a quote from State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Sydney Dixon. And in several districts, including Grand, Emory, and Daggett, actually 100% of the students are participating in this full day option. And a more comprehensive list of the kindergarten counts can be found at the link when you receive the slide deck. And the State Board of Education, Rule 277-484, requires a complete update and finalization of data with an as of date of December 1st, 2023 to be input into the UTREX system before 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on December 7th, 2023. The rule does not allow for extensions, so keep that in mind as you're looking to make your submissions. And you want to ensure that your submission is complete, accurate, and finalized before 5 p.m. of 12/7. And failure to submit the data will subject the LEA to the provisions outlined in our 277 114. And the deadlines for the 12/1/23 data submission, the first thing to keep in mind is that on 11/24/23 by 5 p.m., you have to have all your historical updated requests submitted by that date so they can be there in time for that December 7th submission. And this December 7th submission needs to be completed, finalized, and submitted so that they can update the 12/1 data and data points to review regarding this are that the SPED enrollment and preschool enrollment and SPED and regular homeless, immigrant, and kindergarten types need to be in there and correct. And this submission serves as providing assertions by the LEA to the USBE, and it is expected that the LEA data, IT, and financial personnel will have reviewed the data for accuracy and validity before it is submitted. So that is our last slide with regard to that, which is perfect timing for our next presenter. And let's go ahead and see if she is ready. So Melissa Mendenhall from the elementary science, and she's a STEM specialist. She is going to present on pre-K through 12, a pre-K through 12 science update. So Melissa, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Hi, Lisa. Hello, everyone. Also, Milo Mon is here with me. We work together as a team. I'm the elementary science and STEM specialist. And Milo, I'll let you introduce yourself.
And I am the secondary science education specialist.
So, Lisa, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, is that working for everyone?
Looks good.
Great. All right. So Milo and I are going to provide with you an update for what's happening in the pre-K-12 science realm right now. We're pretty excited about what's going on and some things that we want to share with you. So I'm Dr. Melissa Mendenhall, and Milo introduced himself. He's amazing. I'm so glad that he is on the team. It's great to have him. How long have you been in your position, Milo?
Almost a year and a half now.
What a fabulous person. We're so lucky he's there. I've been in my position about 4.5 years. So both of us are fairly new, but we're eager to get a lot done. So that's good. Okay, so our agenda for this update is we're going to share with you instructional expectations of the standards. Our standards changed for 6th through 8th grade in 2016 and for K-5 and 9-12 in 2019, but that included major shifts. It wasn't just wording, major shifts to what we're expecting educators to do. So we're going to share those shifts with you. Then we're going to give you what are the results of the state science assessments currently, help you kind of deconstruct what goes into the school report cards, because that's important for you to know. We'll share with you what supports we've created for science for our educators and for you, and what upcoming supports we're working on this year. So to start out, Milo is going to help you understand what are the instructional expectations of our SEED standards.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. So as Melissa kind of mentioned, 2016 was when we shifted to what we refer to as three-dimensional instruction or science instruction. Melissa can go to the next slide. And so what in the past, our science standards were really focused just on the content. What do students need to know? But when in 2016, we shifted to what we refer to as three-dimensional instruction or three-dimensional science, which integrates together not only what students know, but also what they do and how they think, and that integrates them together. And so the idea of like what scientists and engineers do is what we refer to as the science engineering practices. And so we wanted students to actually do things that scientists do. So like asking questions, planning and carrying out their own investigations, analyzing and interpreting data, actually doing what a scientist does. And then the cross-cutting concepts is kind of like the lenses that scientists use to think about different things and how they frame their thinking to help them understand what they're observing, what they're seeing. And so that's the cross-cutting concepts. And it includes things like looking for patterns, looking for cause and effect. What's the structure and function of things that we're looking at here? And so how do scientists think? And then, of course, we have what they know. We call that our display core ideas. So the main ideas of biology, of life science, of physics, that knowledge base that helps them understand and explain what's going on. And all three of those get integrated together. Melissa, if you can go to the next slide. And so this quote here says, "The three dimensions of science learning, the practices, cross-cutting concepts, and disciplinary core ideas need to play a part in everything teachers and students do in science class, and they need to be woven together in a way that builds cumulatively." And so our science standards, every science standard has at least one practice, one cross-cutting concept, and one core idea that is stated in the standard itself. And in classroom instruction, that translates to classroom instruction being basically any activity that they're doing in the classroom should integrate together those three ideas. There should be potentially a science engineering practice, a cross-cutting concept, and a core idea behind every single activity that they're doing in the classroom. And these activities, can go to the next slide, help them to understand what we refer to as a phenomena or authentic problem. And so these are integrated around phenomena, helping them to bring relevance to their situation. So basically, like, why is the sky blue is a good phenomena. It's blue during the day, but at night it's dark. That could be a phenomena that they're trying to investigate in the classroom. And they're going to use the practices, the cross-cutting concepts, and the content to integrate together to figure out that phenomena, maybe build a model about that phenomena and do experiments. And that's kind of the main shifts that have gone on with our science instruction. And you can see this reflected in our SEED standards. You can go to the next slide, Melissa. So for example, here is our SEED standard. This is for kindergarten, K.2.4. And the science engineering practices is bolded. So for this one, it's design and communicate a solution is the science engineering practice. The cross-cutting concepts in our standards will be underlined. So this one, it's effects. And so the effects is what they're doing. And then disciplinary core ideas is the rest of the normal font that is there, kind of illustrating what is present there and the content that they need to know. Now we also integrate in engineering standards. And so the engineering standards will be italicized, which you kind of can see there in the standard. And then there's also some additional emphasized statements and example statements that could be present. They are not present in every single one, but they could be there. And then you'll see in parentheses the disciplinary core ideas. They've been numbered and labeled as well. And so those are the specific disciplinary core ideas that this standard hits on. This one being Earth and Space Science, ESS, and then some engineering standards, since it's an engineering standard as well. So
and we'll show you in a minute documents where you can see. So for like ESS 3.c, what exactly is that? We've created resources for teachers, so we'll show you those in a minute.
Yep, and that's it. I think I've got for me. So Melissa, I hand the torch back to you first off, is there any major questions, comments, concerns before jumping to the next item?
The only question I saw in there was whether or not the slides would be made available to.
Yes, I will get those to you.
Sweet.
Okay, our statewide science assessment results. Where are we at currently? This has been a huge transition for teachers. It's pretty much renovated every teacher in the state. No one has learned this way. So all teachers are having to revision. What is effective science instruction? It's really changed from this idea of learning about to figuring out to sense making. And that's what we really want to see our students doing. So where are we at right now? Grades 4 through 8 take the RISE science assessment, the summative RISE science assessment. Those assessments are built to mirror what we would expect effective science instruction to look like. They start with an authentic context phenomenon. Here's a situation. Then students are scaffolded through using practices, and ways of thinking, which are the cross-cutting concepts, to ultimately be able to explain what's the science concept at work in this phenomenon, this authentic situation. Our tests are fabulous to help teachers understand the rigor of what's expected, and also to think about how do we need to shift instruction, because instruction should look like what these assessments look like to a large extent. So we started this assessment in 2018-19. That's the first year we have data. And grades 4 through 8 cumulatively were 51% proficient in our science standards. During COVID, that dipped a little bit, but then it's coming back up. So just a slight dip. We're back up to 50% proficient. So that's really a good thing. But I do think there's a lot of room that by some minor shifts to the ways of thinking, we can really support much higher proficiency for our students. So that's grades 4 through 8. Milo's going to talk about the rest of the grades.
Yeah, so in high school, we have 2 end of year tests or one major one that is administered, and that's the Utah Aspire Plus. And the Utah Aspire Plus is meant to be an indicator of how well students will be doing on the ACT. It's supposed to be the ACT-like test to get them prepared for that. And you can see that we see similar trends from what was seen in elementary school from the RISE test, a dip with COVID occurring and then potentially coming back and even getting above where we are at pre-COVID levels in some cases there. So that's kind of some good signs to see there. Aspire Plus is only administered in 9th and 10th grade. And we don't have an end of year test that's administered in 11th and 12th grade, but we do have the ACT. Melissa, if you can go to the next slide. And so the ACT is generally administered during 11th grade. 9th grades and 10th graders can take it as well as 12th graders. But for the most part, Utah, all 11th graders take it in Utah and whatnot. And so you can see again, we have 2020 looks like the score is a little bit higher than 2019, but that could be because of COVID. And then we did get that drop of COVID that occurred. And then we're seeing that we are coming back to pre-COVID levels and even surpassed 2019 in terms of our ACT score there in this most recent year. And so that's where we're at in assessment results. Any questions, comments, or concerns you'd like to bring up?
I have a question, Milo.
Yeah.
On your science 4 through 8 average, it looked like it was just above 50%.
Yes.
About 50%. And then when we start hitting the high school years, can you speak to why you think we have that drop? Because I mean, 30% is not much to write home about.
Right.
Is that a test alignment issue? Is that where is the disconnect there?
That would be the major thing, because the RISE test and the Aspire Plus test are very different tests, and they are testing different things. The RISE test is more aligned to the Utah's core standards. The Aspire Plus is content agnostic, and so it does not address the specific standards that they would have been taught in that class. And so the idea is, if teachers are teaching the science engineering standards, the SEED standards, and are getting students to actually do the practices and do the cross-cutting concepts, like they should be doing well on the Aspire Plus as in addition to the RISE. Will it ever actually match it? That's up for debate, but they are very different tests in terms of how they're administered and what they're looking at and the data that they're collecting in that regards. And that's partially why we have very different proficiency scales.
It's a good question, though. Thank you. Because they are very different tests. Which I think that brings us to this idea of school report cards, because I know that those are coming out real soon if they have not already. So I think it's important for us to see how those are put together. Not that we're teaching too many tests, but I think it's important for us to understand, especially in elementary, there's been this misconception that if we only focus on ELA and math, that's really all we need to do. Well, the school report cards don't say that that's accurate. When we look at how the school report cards are weighted, for elementary, you can see 37% for proficiency, 37% for growth. There's 25%, which is for the lowest. 17% is for the lowest 25% of our students, and then 9% is English language, English learner progress. That's determined by WIDA. So that's kind of, we can pull that piece out. The other three pieces are split equally into thirds. So this proficiency is worth a total of 56 points, and it's split evenly between science, ELA, and math. Each one of them are worth 18 2/3 points. So that proficiency amount, so if they do really well in language arts, they might get, close to 18 of 18 of those points. Same with math. However, if they haven't done well in science, you can't get those 18 points. So 50% proficiency would put you at only 9 1/3 points for science. The same thing is true in growth. It's weighted exactly 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And for your lowest 25% of the students, again, it's weighted exactly 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So that's important for people to know, that science is equally weighted with math and language arts when you're looking at your school report card. For high schools, it's similar. It's 1/3 of proficiency, 1/3 of growth, and it is one-third of your growth of your lowest 25%. These other factors, it is not, none of them play into that. They look at course taking, trans, ACT. So those are kind of taken out of the picture. I put in here this I think actually Milo put it in for me. The QR code takes you to the direct assessment handbook to show you and explain this to you if you want to actually see it in USBE print. It starts on page 14 and goes through about page 17. And it will tell you that 1/3 of the points are 18 2/3, and they're awarded for each subject area. And then they're summed and added together for total achievement in each of those 3 areas. So if there's fewer than 10, that's a little bit different story. You can read about that if there are fewer than 10 students that take the test. So you can read about those situations. But in general, for all of those sections, they're all equally weighted, 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So something that I've found principals really don't know. And they need to be aware of that. I think it's in their best interest to know that. Okay, let's move on to completed supports. First of all, was there any question about the school report card? Hey, that's awesome, because I was going to say, go ahead and talk to assessment about it. It's their handbook. So, woohoo! I like the no questions in that area. I'm just the purveyor of what's happening. I am not the maker of them. Okay, so let's look at completed science supports. So these are things that our educators have available to them. We have core guides for every grade or content area in kindergarten through 12th grade. They include formative assessments that are built in the same fashion as the summative assessments for RISE for grades 4 to 8. So they're practice tests for teachers to help see, how are my students doing? How are they at understanding the rigor expected? How am I doing in supporting them and being competent? What should I adjust in my instructions? So the core guides are great. We have a UEN Seed eMedia Hub that I'm going to show you a link for in a minute. We have Seed Canvas courses for teachers, and I'll explain what they are momentarily. And then something that I highlighted here because I think will be useful to you is an observation rubric. that you can take as you're going through your science classrooms or watching science instruction to help you know what should I be looking for and how can I support teachers. There's a QR code here that goes to it, but just really quickly, it shows you from less effective to more highly effective. What might I need to be seeing? So it gives you really some just 3 quick areas and then a debrief with teachers to see their thinking behind why they did what they did, where you can see what is going on, what might be the next step to support teachers shifting towards more effective instruction. So that seemed like something very relevant to this audience. When we look at the core guides, there's a section for every single standard that said, for the 3 dimensions, this is what students should be doing. This is how they should be thinking. This is what they should come to know. There's phenomena provided for where do we see these science concepts in students' real world. We've provided phenomena possibilities. There are also the formative assessments that we talked about. There's a proficiency evidence statements right in there to say, what would proficient student work look like? It tells you right in these core guides. There also there's a section on discourse and vocabulary. How can we support science discourse in the class and students using appropriate terms? What would we expect to be seeing? So those are all built right into this core guide. So the QR code is there for you. That's something you may want to look at and make sure your teachers are aware of. Also see Canvas courses. This top one is about implementing the SEED standards. It shows the major shifts and supports teachers with resources. It's a fairly in-depth Canvas course. They can take it on teachers can take it on their own time. It's self-paced, there's no fee. And if they complete it, they get 2 USBE credit hours that they can put on their transcript. The other courses, K through 8, are to help teachers understand what is the science content that they'll be teaching. A lot of those teachers, science wasn't what they went to school as their major discipline. So they might not understand what some of the science concepts are that they need to teach. These courses hone in for every standard. What science concepts do teachers need to know? What's the background on that? Those are just being revised and changed within the next month. The new versions will pop up. So I might wait a month before I share that with teachers. The new versions that pop up will tie directly back to the core guides and will help teachers see the learning progressions of where students have come from in the science concept, where they should be at this grade, and where they're going. So some good additions that will be coming in the revised version that will be out within the month. The UEN CD Media Hub, hugely successful. It has collections of excellent science resources. They're by grade. There's also collections by community, such as PhET simulations that teachers could use, or different lesson plans from, the Natural History Museum or Loveland Living Planet Aquarium. So there are different collections that are available along with grade level collections. And as you can see, there's been 361,000 hits to this site. So teachers are using it. So I would make sure your teachers were aware of it. It's a great place to go for them to think about resources and lesson plans that they might use to support their curriculum. Okay, as you can see, this is professional learning that we provided in the past. We've tried to provide a lot for teachers. Our biggest problem is helping teachers know what's available. So that's where I think it's important. We will try to send that out to you through your listserv. And it would be helpful to us if you pass this on to your teachers so that they knew what opportunities there were. So we are going to let you know what we have coming up this year. Now, Milo's going to fill you in on the last piece of our presentation.
Yes. Some upcoming science supports. You can go to the next slide, Melissa. So one that we've already started making public, or that we're working on as a long-term project, is what we refer to as the Science Education Toolkit, the acronym USET with that. But we were talking with our science leaders, and we were looking like, how can we better support this shift to three-dimensional science instruction, to high quality three-dimensional science. And so we came up with this idea to make these toolkits which focus on specific aspects of the science of high quality three-dimensional instruction. And so we've been developing these one-pagers that we're putting into what we refer to as the toolkit. And each one-pager focuses on a specific aspect of it. So like using phenomena, like how do you choose and select high-quality phenomena? How do you integrate the three dimensions together in your instruction? How do you use disciplinary literacy in science? How do you effectively use discourse with your students to get them talking about science, to figure out what they need to about the phenomena? So the different aspects, and so it talks about, each one pager talks about what it is, gives a breakdown of what it looks like in the classroom, and gives a rubric for how teachers can use that or can assess their own where they are at in terms of implementing that aspect of high quality three-dimensional science instruction. And so that's something that's great. That, and the QR code there, Melissa, is what right takes us to that, I believe. That's what
Yes.
QR code. So and that those are hosted on the CD Media Hub that Melissa was talking about earlier there. Secondary science is making revisions to our formative assessments that are in the core guides. We got feedback that we could make need some revisions made to them, and so we're in that process right now, making those revisions, and they should be completed and published by February or March. We're looking to get those published back into the core guides. We are also working on adding writing prompts to our open educational resource textbook. We have an OER textbook that's posted on the UN website. And we're going to be adding writing prompts to them. So three-dimensional writing prompts for students to be able to, and teachers to be able to use in their classroom if they're using the textbooks. We're continually adding stuff to the CD Media Hub. So always check back to see what else could be there. And we're working on creating what the PK-12 science framework. And so what does science effectively look like on a systems level with both educators and educational leaders, and implementing that in the classroom. So that hopefully will be coming out here soon. We're also providing professional learning opportunities. We're currently implementing a three-dimensional science instruction institute for both teachers and instructional coaches to see like what is three-dimensional science and what does it look like. We're working with teachers or coaches to help them to coach three-dimensional science. We're also working with teachers that are unfamiliar with three-dimensional science still. Even though we've been doing it since 2016, there still are a good amount of teachers that are still unfamiliar with what are the shifts that have occurred. And we got the STEM Institute that's going on, helping teachers, especially at elementary level, to develop that culture of STEM within their classrooms. Doing presentations at both the Utah Rural Schools Association and the Utah Science Teaching Association, and involved with recognizing great science teachers with the PAIMS, which stands for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching.
Hey, just of a quick note, I'm one of the co-facilitators for a new STEM advisory team that will start having 3 times a year STEM, what does STEM instruction look like, STEM education in our state. Those will happen 3 times a year. Anyone is invited. So I will send an email about that to put on your listserv so that you can come to that meeting if you would like. But the advisory team that determines what this meeting will contain, we have spots for 2 charter schools. We had 2 and they dropped out at the last minute. So if you would like to be on that advisory team, we work with higher ed, informal, the school districts, the state, the STEM Action Center to decide what would STEM education look like in our state. If you would like to be on that advisory team, if you will please email me. We have slots for 2 people. And I also just had 1 team drop out of the STEM Institute. They had a major problem come in. The STEM Institute is 6 days. It looks, subs are paid. It looks at what is effective STEM instruction for your culture. And there are people here, like I see Lakeview is here, some people who have participated in the past. It's a fabulous institute. We bring in NASA, we bring in different specialists to help you think, what can we do for our community, for our school to improve STEM instruction? So if you're interested in that, there is room for one team to join. So just a note of things to think about. Please email me about either of those, which gets us to, we don't have time for questions, but we do have our emails up. So please email us any questions that you have. We're excited we could be here today.
Well, thank you, Melissa and Milo, for being here and sharing this information with us today. We appreciate it.
I will get the PowerPoint to everyone.
All righty, so next up, we have Ben Rasmussen from Law and Professional Practices, and he's going to speak about UPPAC reporting changes. So Ben, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you this afternoon. Let me see if I can share my screen here real quick. All right. My name is Ben Rasmussen. I am over the Utah Professional Practices Advisory Commission, and I wanted to take a minute to chat with you because the board has passed some changes to the UPAC rules that we want you to be aware of, as it will affect your reporting obligations primarily, but they've also made some changes to the educator standards that I think you'll want to be familiar with so that you can train your educators on those issues going forward. So I've labeled these coming attractions at UPAC, and we'll talk a little bit about those. For those of you that aren't terribly familiar with UPAC, this is our UPAC staff. Just so that you're familiar with us, Ashley and Lisa are our investigators who handle the look into the complaints we receive. Randy is our assistant that clears all your background checks and works with us, and I'm the team leader, so I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what's coming forward. The rule changes that have been passed are going to be effective, so that you're aware, around January 7th. The board passed these rule changes in the most recent November meeting. We'll publish those in the bulletin that the state issues on December 1st, and then there's 37 days before those take effective. So around January 7th, they take effect, and these new requirements will start to become binding on all the LEAs. The first change that the board made, I wanted to highlight, although it won't have a big influence on your LEAs, but the first change was made to the definition of boundary violations that you find in our administrative rule. There have been a number of questions out there as to the penalties for boundary violations and how many times an educator has to repeat professional misconduct before more serious penalties come into play. If you're interested in that, you can take a look at that. We've kind of highlighted the different factors that UPAC's going to look at when determining when higher penalties such as a suspension or reprimand may come into play for student boundary issues. The more relevant changes that will affect your charter schools come into play in a couple of others. The first one I want to highlight is in R277211, and that deals with how UPAC deals with allegations that are referred to our internal audit hotline. Many of you may have had a situation where the audit team has referred something to your local school board that was reported to USBE, and they refer that along to you. They refer many of these, if they involve an educator, a licensed educator, to UPAC, and tell us that we need to look into what's happening. So what will happen here is that the executive secretary has to refer all these cases that are referred to the audit hotline now. All these cases have to go to UPAC to determine if the state should look into them. So specifically, we've added language in section 5 that affects your schools because the USBE internal audit department shall refer to UPAC and the LEA any complaint against an educator that would violate the educator standards. And then the executive secretary, which is me, that's what we Does anyone know that they're talking there? It looks like you muted. Okay. So when I get one of these allegations that involves your school, you'll probably get an email from me that says, we've gotten this complaint to the internal audit hotline. Can you tell me anything about it? Do you have any relevant evidence? The rule requires me to consult with your school. And basically what we will ask is if you have any information that you'd like UPAC to consider before we determine whether to open a case involving your educator. A lot of times this is just sharing what you've already investigated. Some schools will look into things when they get these and kind of report back. If you do want to do that and investigate before we open a case, we will usually defer to you on that. But just know that when we get these internal audit hotline complaints, that's kind of the process that we will take. We'll contact your school, make sure that you're aware of the complaint, and then seek your advice and any evidence you have regarding the case before UPAC determines whether we should get involved. Let's see, there's in the chat, it says, or did I put January 7th, 2023? Yes, that should be 2024. Thanks for catching. Okay. The next thing that the board did was they made a number of changes to the educator standards. So the next few slides that I'm going to show to you are changes that were made to kind of the list of things that educators are either prohibited from doing or that the educators are required to do. First change they made was in the language regarding the materials that educators are providing to students. This was tailored to fit in with the sensitive materials laws that are out there and your LEA's policies on sensitive materials. But under the new educator standards, an educator may not expose students to sensitive materials as defined in Utah code and as determined by the educator's LEA. That's a violation of standards for an educator. An educator may not discriminate against, harass, or exclude a student for participating basically in a program on the basis of protected classes. Before that, just simply said exclude a student from participating. The language has been added now by the board that you can't discriminate against a student based on a protected class or harass a student based upon a protected class. So they've expanded that definition a little bit more based on the perception that there is some discrimination going on here anecdotally. An educator may not invite, suggest, or encourage a student to reconsider or change the student's sexual orientation or gender identity. That's a whole new provision in there that the board is concerned about. And so that's something that we'll be watching for, is invite, suggest, or encourage a student to change sexual orientation or gender identity is prohibited conduct by an educator. Next, an educator may not use the educator's position through instruction materials or symbols to actively endorse, promote, or disparage a particular partisan, religious, denominational, sectarian, agnostic, or atheistic belief or viewpoint in a manner inconsistent with the policy of the educator's LEA. So they went back and forth on the wording there. They changed that a little bit. They had ideological in there at one point, but settled just in that partisan language. But educators will now need to be careful that they're not promoting certain beliefs over others or disparaging certain beliefs. We have a new provision on sex education. An educator may not violate the codes or rules regarding what can be taught in sex education. And supplemental materials, an educator shall use supplemental materials consistent with LEA policy as required by Utah code. So that's something else where they've tried to tie into what the legislature has been doing here. As you know, a lot of these are coming forward because the legislature has had a lot of bills floating with concerns about certain things in the classroom, and the board's tried to stave off future legislation in part by hopefully strengthening the educator standards and tightening what's in there. So it's important that you know what's in the educator standards, because any violation of the educator standards is required to be reported to UPAC. So that's not new, but I wanted to highlight the existing language for reporting that stays the same, and that is that an LEA shall notify UPAC if an educator is determined pursuant to a judicial or administrative proceeding or internal LEA investigation to have violated the educator standards described in the rule. So that is the primary reporting rule. That stays the same. If you have a violation of the standards, those should be reported to UPAC on our forms. There's a new reporting wrinkle that's been added here because there's a concern that parent reports are going to schools, and bear in mind, I'm not the one that came up with this, but this is what board members are hearing anecdotally, is that schools aren't following up on parent reports, or parents don't hear what's happening with their complaints to the schools about educators, and so they come to the board frustrated. So the new requirement is that anytime a parent reports a teacher to your school and alleges a violation of the standards, that has to be reported to UPAC within 30 days. Now, what does that look like? That means that many of you will conduct an investigation in that 30 days and say, yes, this is true, no, this is not true. Either way, if a parent reports a violation of the standards or alleges a violation of the standards about one of your educators, you're going to have to report that to UPAC within 30 days. Now, if you're not done with your investigation when you report that, UPAC's going to report it. We're going to just kind of sit on it and kind of wait for you to follow up, because we want to know what your LEA investigation determines before we determine whether we look into it. But all notifications from parents are going to have to come to UPAC. Now, I will say that this measure was a lot more extreme when it was first drafted. I will acknowledge that this is a little burdensome on your schools to have to report these things to UPAC. When it was first drafted, it was originally going to be within 72 hours. And it was originally all allegations, not just allegations from a parent. So through the committee process and through the board process, they did narrow that down some, but they feel like we need to be tracking the allegations that parents are making regarding teachers, seeing what's coming of those, and they feel like this will help us from a data perspective, even on the cases that we don't open. The allegations that we get under the sent to UPAC are going to be classified as private under the rule changes, so that while some of these allegations may be proven to be false after you investigate them, even though you have to let us know about them, we're going to classify them as private and not make them as not share them with the public. When you do send in referrals, we're asking under the rule changes that you provide us specifically what the findings of your school's investigation was, whether any criminal charges were filed, what your school's disciplinary action was or was not. So if you decided not to take action, let us know what that was and the reason for that decision, and then any evidence that may be relevant if UPAC chooses to investigate the matter. The feeling that the board, the sponsors of these changes shared with us was that most of these changes, if the school doesn't substantiate that anything happened, we're not going to get involved in. But there may be a few cases where we look at it and we want to take a second look. And so that's why we need this information in those cases. So how does this, I just kind of want to summarize how this changes things, just so that you understand. For most allegations from a student or from a colleague or just something that you observe as an administrator, nothing's changing in this process. Your LEA is going to continue to investigate and refer substantiated violations of the educator standards to UPAC. That doesn't change. We'll still look at those at the same rubric, ask for the same information. When you do get an allegation from a parent, if your investigation is complete within 30 days, very little is going to change. You'll still, if there's a substantiated violation, you're going to report that to UPAC still. The one thing that will change is you will send, if you find that the allegations are not substantiated, that the allegations are false, you're still going to send us a form that says this was the allegation from the parent, this is what we found, and UPAC will determine how to move forward from there. If your investigation on something takes longer than 30 days, Like I said, UPAC is going to record those allegations, and then your LEA will follow up with UPAC after your investigation is complete. We may set a 30-day or 60-day timer after we get it to follow up with you if we don't hear anything else. But hopefully between either you contacting us or us following up with you, we'll find out what you ultimately concluded about those things. And then UPAC will review and determine if a separate look is warranted from the state. Before I move on, is there any questions about how those changes in reporting looks? Do you have any questions about what that means for your schools or any of the changes in the standards? If you have anything, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to touch on one other thing just briefly, but that's the primary reason that I wanted to come. Since I do have you here and have a listening ear, and I'll get to your question, Brett, here in just a second. I do want to remind you about the Purple Star Schools program. I'm over the State Council on Military Children as well. Near the beginning of the year, we'll start taking applications for our next cohort of Purple Star schools. We're very pleased that we got some great schools last year from the charter school community. Excelsior Academy, Utah Military Academy, and Promontory School for Expeditionary Learning up in Box Elder were all recognized as Purple Star schools last year. We've had others from the charter school community that are in those ranks, and we hope that other schools amongst you will consider applying. This is our program for recognizing schools that are helping the military community. So I wanted to just emphasize that and remind you that if you have questions about that, feel free to let me know or to use these resources. So looking at the questions in the chat, first, Dr. Agutz, I will share this presentation with Lisa and she can share that with your group. Will you provide training if we want to our schools? Yes, that is something that we are happy to do. We do, between myself and my two investigators, we're happy to make arrangements to come to your school or to do a Zoom training, whatever would be easier to familiarize them with the educator standards at an appropriate time. This would be a good time to do it because we'll be adding these new provisions in there and talking a little bit more about these new changes that the board has asked to include. Brett, you asked, when do you report back to the schools on something we send to you? So the rule does require that we ultimately tell you what the outcome of our cases is. What happens is we usually go through our investigation, and when we conclude the investigation, we're going to copy the school on the outcome of the case. So if we send some sort of a letter or if we take action on a license, we're going to copy the school director and or the HR director on the action that we take. And so that's how we report back to you. If you need an update on where the investigation is going in the middle of it, you're always welcome to contact either myself or our investigators, and we're happy to let you know where things are going, and so that you can be aware of that. Rebecca asked, you said the reports are protected. Is your office the only one who sees the name if nothing comes of the accusation? Teachers are concerned about a blacklist mentality. It's a good question, Rebecca. One other thing that the board passed in conjunction with these rule changes that we need to figure out how to implement, and is that the board has asked me to adopt a retention schedule and to put in place a retention schedule so that when we have these cases that are not substantiated and determine that we're not going to follow up, that we will destroy those as quickly as possible. I'm in the process of putting that together, and we'll determine how fast the records committee will approve letting us destroy those records, but they won't be shared out with media or with other schools or anything like that, as long as the educator is cleared by your investigation, and assuming we don't want to take a second look at it. And then Brett commented the case was dismissed and he never heard back. That would be an oversight on my office's part. I apologize for that. It is our normal practice when we send a letter that says a case is dismissed, we copy the school district on that. And I try, if for some reason, if a school reports something that we have determined not to open, I try and contact the school and let them know that as well. if we choose not to open something that a school has referred to us. So that's what I have for you today. I just wanted to make you aware of these changes in the rule, in our UPAC rules, so you can be aware of those. I know that there's a lot of concerns over this lately, and we are still probably expecting some legislation that's related to some of these issues in the legislative session. But like I said, these rule changes will go into effect in early January, so we want you to be aware of those, and we are happy to help you educate your educators on these, your teachers on these as well. So that's all I have today.
All right, thank you so much, Ben. We appreciate your time. All right, so our last presentation today, and we are a little bit ahead of schedule, is from EdDirection, and it's on perpetual control theory, creating shared references for successful classroom visits. If EdDirection is online and ready to go, I'm going to say just go ahead. If not, we might just take a little 5-minute break. So not sure who's supposed to be here from EdDirection, but if you're there, let me know.
I am here, but I'm
Okay.
happy to take a 5-minute break if people need a 5-minute break to go do a bio break before we jump in, or happy to just jump in. We'll follow your guys' lead. But I would ask if you could help make me
A co-host?
host of the meeting so that I can present our slide deck. That'd be great.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead then and take that, just convene back at 2:25, and I'll go ahead and get
Perfect.
you set up, and we'll give people time to take a little break.
Perfect.
Hey, Katie, I think you should be ready to go.
We go in and see if it works. Beautiful. Did my screen share with you? Perfect. Okay, we'll give people just a few more minutes.
Okay, Katie, why don't we have you go ahead and get ready or started whenever you're ready.
Perfect. All right. Well, we are super excited to be here with you guys and to talk about the perceptual control theory and creating a shared reference for successful classroom experiences. So we're super excited about this. It's going to be a lot of fun today as we run through this. And so just kind of as a reminder of where we're coming from, we were together last back in September. It feels like forever ago because time just flies. But we talked about student-centered leadership and the science behind human behavior. So hopefully you guys kind of remember that. We talked about the brain and the prefrontal cortex with it and your amygdala getting hijacked and the fist, right? And all that great stuff with the human brain. And this week we are going to be talking about perceptual control theory and how we can use these references that we have to, one, create new shared references with each other for classroom visits, and two, just to gain an understanding and awareness of how the human brain works and how this perceptual control theory has this loop and how this works with our teachers and how we can utilize this information to be instructional leaders. So with us today, we also have Charlie Lyons, which I'm sure you see his handsome face right there, smiling at everybody, with us to talk about the human brain, as well as myself, Katie, from Ed Direction to talk about this. And again, we're just super excited to be here. And as we jump into this, our learning intentions for today, we really want to focus on one, like I said, gaining an understanding of the loop and this thing called perceptual control theory, and what this means and how this describes human behavior and how we as school leaders can use that so that we can create a shared understanding for successful classroom visits. Because we always want to focus our learning and our leadership in instructional ways for what are we all here for? The same common goal, which is students. We're here for student learning to help them grow and become the amazing contributors to society that they can be. So hopefully we'll know that we have been successful when, one, you guys as school leaders can run through a real life situation using the loop and understand this perceptual control theory and how it describes who we are as human beings and what we do and why we do what we do. And two, we'll be able to consider our current state of practices within classroom visits. And three, consider how we can leverage perceptual control theory to create new conditions for successful classroom visits. So hopefully we'll be able to accomplish all of that today. As you know, we're very collaborative people. So if you want to jump off of mute and talk, we're always happy to have you come off of mute and engage in the conversation. So we're gonna kick off with a little warm up, and then we're gonna dive into perceptual control theory for about 20 minutes. Then we'll tie that into our classroom visits, and we'll close for about 5 minutes at the end. So with that, I'm gonna pass the mic over to Charlie to take us away and remind us about our brief operating systems.
Good afternoon, everybody. So excited to be back and wanted to remind the crew about our brief operating agreement that we actually created collaboratively last time we were together. The sticky notes you see down in the bottom right corner are your comments and your pieces of information that you shared as we answered the question together about how we were going to treat each other and how we were going to engage in this learning together. And we took all of the information and that you guys shared, and we tried to kind of synthesize it and combine it into what turned out to be a pretty easy to remember little slogan here, is that we're going to focus on the learning together, that we were going to actively participate, and that we were all going to be present and open with one another as we engage in this learning. And sure enough, that spells FAB, short for fabulous, because we're all fabulous people, right? So that worked out really well for us, that we get to focus on the learning, actively participate, and be present and open, and we're all going to be fab together in this learning environment. So excited to lean into that a little bit as we get started together today. Maybe take a just brief second and think, how am I going to be fabulous in the next 57 minutes? How am I going to be as fabulous as I've agreed to be in this learning? So to start that and to get our brains going, we have the Pep Talk Generator. This is a tool that we hope, like all the tools and all the information that we share with you guys, is something that you can easily lift and take back with you as you are maybe leading a learning session with your teachers or with your staff members, something that just lighthearted and easy, and to kind of get that oxytocin flowing in the brain. And basically, it's a pretty simple activity. It's called the Pep Talk Generator because it can be used to give somebody in the group a pep talk. Okay. And so I'm going to pick Lisa because she is the one that I see right now. And I'm going to give Lisa Cooper an amazing pep talk. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to just pick one of the slogans from each of the 3 columns to build out my wonderful pep talk for Lisa this afternoon. So I might say something to Lisa like, Tiger, your DNA reigns magic. See, look, it pep Lisa up. Like, look, she's blushing, she's smiling, there's some laughing going on, some serious oxytocin flowing. All right, Lisa, so now you need to pep somebody up. I'm gonna need you to use this energy and pep somebody up.
Okay, let's see.
Craig turned his camera on, so that means he needs pep. I mean,
Okay, Craig. We'll go with Craig. All right. Ooh, I like this one. Superstar. That sparkle in your eye has serious game. There you go.
Nice. All right, Craig, you want to pep somebody up? You want to pass along the energy?
Sure. Let's see who I see. Okay, Katie. Know this, Katie. Your presence here just shimmers.
Aw, thanks. I just love it. This is my most favorite, like, connecting activity ever. Charlie, I'm going to pass it back to you to close it out because you are like a superstar that every thought you have just raises the roof.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope to raise the roof with lots of thoughts today. So thanks. So anybody else gotta just give one chance for anybody else that's just feeling really peppy and needing to pass along some pep before I go forward. All right, that's fine. So why do we start with something like this? To take a quick review and a quick glance back into last time, if you remember us talking about the brain, the oxytocin in our brain is a neurochemical that starts to send the energy to the front of the brain. And that is where we want the energy. Does anyone remember why we want the energy in the front of the brain? Anybody brave and want to come off mute and remind us why we want the energy there? Basically, the long story short is we want the energy to be in the front because that's where we know learning happens. That's where we know people can be collaborative, people can be creative, people can take one challenge and critically think about that challenge and connect it to another challenge. That all of this happens when the oxytocin or the happy chemicals in our brain are firing and that prefrontal cortex is engaged. What we don't want in a learning session or in a session where we're trying to lead a group of people into a positive direction is for those fear chemicals to be firing. And when those neurochemicals are firing, then we start to have cortisol dripping towards the back of our brain, and our amygdala gets hijacked and can actually shut down those learning chemicals and shut down those learning regions in our brain. So obviously, if you're leading a school, if you're leading a conversation, in an ideal world, those positive learning chemicals would be firing. So this is just another goofy way with the Pep Talk Generator to make sure we get some of those positive chemicals firing as we head into this next part of learning. Katie, you want to go to the next slide? All right. So now today, now that we're ready to learn, and we got those creative juices flowing, would love to go back to those days in high school or college when you were learning a little bit about psychology, or you were learning a little bit about human behavior, and see if you remember anything about why people do what they do. Is this something you've ever thought about or spent time thinking about? Why do humans do what they do? Why do people behave the way they behave? Why do they get up in the morning and do the crazy things that they do? Has anybody ever wondered this? Has this ever been a part of your journey? So I hope you have. If you could go all the way back to like Greek philosophers and Roman philosophers, it's been a question that's been a part of human nature for a really long time. And wondering why people do what they do is just part of what we think is an important thing to think about and understand as you're trying to successfully lead a school community. So does anybody remember any philosophers out there or any scientists out there from their education career or from their school career? Anybody remember any frameworks around why human beings do what they do? You can type these in the chat if something pops in your memory. You can come off mute and share. I'm going to check over here in the chat and see if anybody's dropped one in. All right. Oh, yes. Good. We got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yep. Past experiences. That's great. Tracy, you're well on your way here. Being rewarded. Yep. There's theories out there about cognitive dissonance. Good. Now we're getting it going. Cognitive behavioral model. Classical conditioning. Dogs. I'm glad somebody keyed into the little dog picture there. All right. So we're going to put another little picture up. Katie, if you go to the next picture. Does this strike any memory? Looks like the Ames team and Brett are right on board with this classical conditioning idea. Anybody remember Pavlov? All right, so Pavlov is probably one of the most famous ones that jumps in people's mind first thing. And basically, as you see in that little picture right there, and as somebody started to mention earlier, he did have a set of dogs. And what he would do is he would throw out steak or some sort of reward to these dogs, and he would ring a bell. When he threw the steak out, he would ring a bell. The dogs would come running and they would salivate, right? Or they would slobber, as we would call it. Okay. Eventually, he did not have to throw out the steak. All he had to do is ring the bell. And what would the dogs do? They would still come running and they would still start to salivate just by ringing the bell. This became known as classical conditioning, right? If we create a stimulus, whether it be a steak or a bell, then organisms, living organisms, will respond to that stimulus. So like scientists always do, they take a theory that gets started by somebody like Pavlov, they take it into a lab and they try to prove, is it right? Is it wrong? What else can we learn about it, right? So they've got rats in a cage. They would create a little stimulus through a speaker or through a light or with a little lever. The rat would go over, they would hit the lever, and food would pop out of the dispenser. And so we said, you know what? That's the explanation for behavior. People are behaving to get some food, to get some steak. They're responding to some sort of classical external stimulus. Next slide, Katie. Then we started what was known as operant conditioning. Basically, the big difference here is classical conditioning is a response in order to get something that's very natural and needed. So something like food, or to get warmth, or to get additional safety, an additional secure feeling, right? That was the whole idea of classical conditioning. I provide a stimulus so that somebody can get something that they need in order to survive. Operant conditioning is very similar. The only difference is we're trying to associate it maybe to something that they don't necessarily need. So it may be something that's just an additional pleasure that they want, or it may be something that they don't need at all, like a punishment or a zap. So we started to take this same rat over into the cage, turn the little light on, he would pull the lever, and instead of him getting food, he would get zapped or he would get some sort of discomfort. So guess what the mouse stopped doing? He stopped going over and pulling the little lever. So we learned not only can you condition people to do something that you want them to do, like run and salivate when you throw a steak out there, you could also maybe, if you zap people enough, if you give them a sharp enough consequence, they're going to stop doing what you don't want them to do. And so this whole classical conditioning, operant conditioning, stimulus response, punishment consequence paradigm started. And we've built a lot of systems on this idea. Anybody have any idea of any system come to mind as a system that we've built on this understanding of behavior and on this understanding of why, how humans do what they do and why they do what they do? Type it in the chat. School bells, traffic tickets, Penny and the Big Bang Theory. What else? You're right. So all of these are examples of systems. You can think of our prison system. You can think of our the way we do really our whole law and punishment. I mean, a lot of that is dealt and built on this idea of punishment, reward, classical conditioning kind of behavior. So I'm going to push our thinking on this a little bit to see if there maybe are some other theories out there. And Katie is going to create a fist. And we are going to all use our best classical conditioning options that we have to convince Katie to let go of her fist. So we're going to think of any possible thing that we could do to get Katie to let go of her fist. Katie's job during this activity is to keep her fist clenched. Our job is to use our best language, because we don't have any way of physically harming Katie right now. We can't hurt her in any way physically, but how else might we be able to convince Katie to let go of her fist? Someone give it a try. Tell her to make another fist and wait till she gets hungry, and then put a donut in front of her. That's maybe a good technique. Oh, good try, Tyler. Your hand itch is really bad, Katie. Not working. All right, so we've tried some bribery with a donut. We've tried a little trickery by distracting her here to see if she'll itch. Some mind.
Well, why do I want to open it?
The Ames team's trying some mind tricks. Brett's trying some mind tricks. You really want to open it. Why? Why, Brett? Intrinsically you want to. Somebody's starting to figure this out here. What's going on in there? So it's not about the donut? It's not about the itchy armpit? Good question, Stephanie.
My family.
Okay, so we know our family. Okay, how can we use that? Back to the donut again.
If I physically had a donut, maybe.
Sorry, guys, we had a fire drill, so I'm not sure what's going on.
We're trying to convince Katie to let go of her fist, Nathan. You got anything?
Oh, depends on what you're holding on to, I guess.
All right. Well, we know most likely that no matter how long we sit here and try, we could try donuts. We could try threats. No one tried a threat. You guys are way too nice of people. Nobody threatened to hurt Katie or threatened to take her job away or anything if she didn't open her fist. But we could try guilt trips. We could try all kinds of different things. But we know that no matter what we try, Katie's only going to let go of her fist if she wants to let go of her fist. Right? We can't really control her. There's really no way to control her from the outside, that it's only going to happen if Katie decides she wants it to happen. So this starts the conversation about this idea that human beings are really not only extrinsically motivated, that there may be some intrinsic things going on, that there may be more to it than just ringing a bell and throwing a steak and offering a punishment or a reward or some sort of external stimulus. Nobody tried a guilt trip either. I didn't hear anybody guilting Katie. I mean, she said that her family's important to her. We could have given her a really hard guilt trip about her kids and how if she doesn't let go of her fists, kids, something, I don't know. But we know that there's something intrinsically going on there. And so really around the same time that Pavlov was doing his research and some of the operant condition, classical conditioning people were doing their research in the 70s, a man by the name of William Powers was also doing research. And he really wasn't buying into the whole external stimulus theory. He felt like there was more going on there with living organisms, and that while there may be some external stimulus that trigger us to do certain things, he felt like there was a lot more to the story than just the external stimulus theory. So he started developing what became known as perceptual control theory. And Katie, if you'll go to the next slide. What he ended up coming up with was known as perceptual control theory, and it was a negative feedback loop. So for short, we just call it the loop. And what it explains is what's actually happening intrinsically when with the outside world going on around us. And so his theory starts with this little dotted line that you see on this chart here. Everything that's happening above the dotted line are things that are happening internally on the intrinsic system. Everything that happens below the line are things happening outside of our system. Okay, so there are still things happening around us. It's not like we're just in this bubble without things happening around us, but everything in this theory above the line is actually happening intrinsically inside of us, and explains a little bit more about what's going on in our internal system. So this explanation starts with what William Powers called references. So the whole theory starts with this idea of references. References come from our experiences. Someone mentioned that in the chat earlier. According to Powers, we are constantly forming references in our mind based on the experiences that we've had, based on what we experienced in school, what we experienced in our family, what we experience on Facebook and Instagram these days, right? All of these experiences are constantly happening, and they're forming references in our head of what Powers said we want our world to be. So eventually we formulate these references, and these references are what we want our world to be. We want our world to be a certain way. We want it to look a certain way, taste a certain way. We want people in our lives to act a certain way based on our prior experiences. Okay, so hold on to that. Right there off the bat, you can tell how maybe there's a little bit more to the story, right? Because what if this dog that came salivating for a steak, for example, what if he ever had a rotten steak one time that gave him a really bad stomachache, and he ended up throwing up for 2 days after he had eaten the steak? That experience is important to think about when you're trying to figure out if that dog's going to run to a steak again, right? Human beings are the same way. if we don't take into consideration the references and the experiences they've had, we're missing a big part of the story. Okay. So we all have references based on our experiences of the way we want our world to be. Then he said, something happens in our outside world. This he called a disturbance. And a disturbance can be anything that happens in our outside world that we start paying attention to. Okay. So that doesn't necessarily have to be somebody yelling and screaming and running down the hallway. It doesn't necessarily have to be, Nathan, a fire alarm. It doesn't have to be some major thing that happens, as much as something that we start paying attention to. Katie, can you click disturbance? Okay, so a disturbance happens in the outside world. Well, how do we get that disturbance once we start paying attention to it? How does it come from the outside world into our intrinsic system? How do we input information? Anybody know? How do we get information from the outside world into our inside system? We start inputting information by using our what? Click it one more time, Katie. How do we input information into our system? Somebody take a guess at it in the chat, so I know you're there. It's out here in the outside world. We need it to come into our inside. Yes, Katrina, for the win. Our senses, right? We start smelling it. We start tasting it. We start hearing it. We start seeing it. And those senses take it from the outside world into the inside world. All of those are called inputs. Okay. That's what power is called, inputs. And once we get enough input from something in our outside world, we create what he called a perception. And that perception, immediately, as soon as we have enough information, that perception is going to get weighed against our reference. So we have a perception of what's currently happening in the outside world. We have our reference based on our prior experiences of what we think should be happening. And guess what? Immediately we compare the two. According to William Powers, immediately we're going to compare the two. We're going to compare what's currently happening to our reference of what we think should be happening. And if there's a match in that comparison, go ahead and click, Katie. And that's called the comparator. Okay. We're comparing our reference to our perception. If there's a match, then we just keep on going. We just keep on moving, just keep on rolling. If there's a mismatch, if our perception doesn't match our reference, okay, then we're in error. And our system will not stay in error. Okay. It will do something to get back in balance. Once we've noticed that what's happening in this world is not matching what we want to have happen, our system goes, and it's in error. We're going to do something to bring ourselves back into balance. Whatever that something is that we decide to do, he called an output. So think about it. Our world's out of balance. What do we do to get ourselves back in balance? Well, one thing we can do is think about it differently. We can change our thoughts. We can be like, you know what? This isn't that big of a deal. I'm just going to take some deep breaths and I'm going to get myself back in balance. We can physically change to get our system back in balance. Like we might start sweating, or we might start breathing harder, or our heart might start changing, right? There's a lot of physical things we can do to get back in balance. Or we can do something to get back in balance. And whenever we do something, we actually create an action to get back in balance. That action goes back out into the outside world, right? Because we can see action, we can see behavior, we can see things happening outside of us. And once that action goes back outside into our outside world, then that is what we call behavior. And so Powers would say behavior or actions are just our best attempt to keep our system in balance. It's our best attempt to get our references to match our perceptions. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? I'm going to give everybody a quick example, but I want to see if there's any questions first. All right, so the quick example would be, I heard from, well, let's do this one. This is the easy one, okay? I go into my office, I sit down, and I start noticing that it's hot, right? That is an example of my system being in error. Well, now, why would my system be in error when I come into my office? Well, maybe my reference of my office temperature is 70 degrees. Every time that I've been in my office for the last 2 weeks, the office has been 70 degrees, right? And so my reference is when I come into my office, I sit down and it's a nice, cozy, comfortable 70 degrees. Well, this day happens to be 5:30 in the morning. This is actually a real situation that happened to me when I was a principal. And this morning I decided it was 5:30. I needed to get into the office early and get some things done before anybody else got there. So I'm sitting in my office and I start sweating. I'm profusely sweating bullets, right? Well, the reason is, find out, the maintenance director doesn't turn the air conditioning on in the building until 6 o'clock. I didn't know that because I had never been in my office at 5:30 in the morning, right? So in that situation, my system starts sweating because I'm there earlier than I've ever been. My system's in error. I've got to do something to get my system back in balance. Now, what could I do? I could start wiping my brow to get the sweat off my brow. I could take my jacket off. I could start fanning myself. I could start cussing out the maintenance director. I could pick up the phone and cuss him out, right? These are all things I could do to try to get my system back in balance. Or I could just change my thinking. I could just think, you know what? I'm not worried about it. I'm busy. I've got too many other things going on. I'm not worried that it's hot in my office. These are all things I could do to try to get my system back in balance. But whatever it is I do to get back in balance is the output I choose. That output will hopefully create a different perception and will get myself back in balance. So that's just one little example. Okay. So I just spent about 10 minutes teaching a scientific theory that is actually written out in 2 700-page science journals. Any questions before we move on? You can put them in the chat or you can come off mute, either way. Or have I taught this so many times that I do that good of a job, no one has any questions about it? Does that help explain a little bit why humans do what they do? I hope so. I hope it's a little bit better explanation. We'll talk about application in a second, but I just want to make sure the theory makes sense before we go any further. Do you think we need another example, Katie? Or do you think we're good? All right, go to the next one. All right, so we want you to take a little bit of think time for yourself to take this theory, and you're going to have 2 options. There is a learning document that you'll have access to. Katie just put the link in the chat. This is just kind of a think guide for you to take this theory that I've just explained and do some individual thinking around it. What about this fits into your current understanding of human behavior? What did you hear that makes sense? What questions do you still have? What do you think needs to be explained a little bit better? And then think about a moment in your life recently where this theory might make a little bit of sense. Run an example, like I just gave you the example of me going into my office early one morning and sweating profusely because it was a lot hotter than I was used to it. That's just one goofy example. But think of an example where this may have played out in your life currently, okay? maybe with a conversation with a friend, maybe with an interaction with a colleague, somewhere in your life recently where this theory kind of helped explain what was going on. So you can walk through it individually on your own think sheet. Or I believe we're going to create a couple optional breakout rooms. We're going to do that, Katie. Okay. So you can either think through it individually, or if you want to jump into one of these breakout rooms, you can jump into one of the breakout rooms and just kind of talk through it a little bit with some of your colleagues. Is everything set up and ready to go? All right, so click on the link, think through it on your own, or jump into a breakout room and talk through it with some colleagues. We're going to give you, I think we decided 5 minutes.
Yep, 5 minutes.
All right, 5 minutes to think or talk through this new theory. See you in about 5 minutes.
Would you put the theory back up?
Sure.
Flow chart.
Is that the one you wanted?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
All right, we'll see everybody back in 5 minutes. Katie, I think you might be muted if you're talking.
But I was saying such great things.
I know
All
you look
right.
too.
Wow, thank you for letting me know. Now that we're back, we're gonna push forward a little bit, that we're all back from our breakout rooms, and hopefully you had some time to kind of think through how this perceptual control theory has worked in your life and how you've seen examples of it happen in your personal life and in your professional life. And we're gonna shift gears just a little bit and switch over to student-centered leadership. We talked about student-centered leadership the last time we were together, and if you remember, we go through student-centered leadership and we're all in the role that we're in to accomplish one main goal, and that's high quality teaching and learning. And we kind of talked through this meta-analysis that Vivian Robinson did that a lot of people are familiar with, but if you're not, just real quick high-level overview. Vivian Robinson, she did about a meta-analysis of about 30 different studies, all focused on instructional leadership and kind of identifying what do we do as school leaders that impact student learning and what is their effect on it, similar to John Hattie's research. And so she identified 5 leadership dimensions that all contribute to high quality teaching and learning. And she assigned them an effect size, just like John Hattie did. And the scale is the same, right? If it's a 0.2 or lower, it's a minimal effect size. If it's 0.4, that's an average effect size, and anything over a 0.6 is a really large effect size. And you can see here that the largest effect size on teacher learning and high quality teaching and learning is leading teacher learning and development. But there's more that we do as school leaders, and we can't forget about those things. And so we know that all of these things have to happen, and you guys have to juggle 9,000 balls in the air at one time. But within these dimensions, we also have these capabilities. And it's kind of the foundation that these dimensions are built upon. We have to apply relevant knowledge of what we're doing. We have to be able to solve complex problems, and we have to be able to build trust within our buildings. And so as we go down this, we're really going to focus on 2 main parts of Vivian Robinson's student-centered leadership. And that first one is building relationships and building that trust, and 2, leading teacher learning and development. And with the common goal that we're going to bring these together to ensure we have high quality teaching and learning happening within our buildings. And we're going to take these and we're going to kind of connect them back to this perceptual control theory. So I want you to think for a minute and take a step back to being back in the classrooms. And when you are back in the classrooms, I want you to think about when your administrator was coming into your building, right? Maybe the first few years you were even teaching, maybe the last few years. But think about, how did you feel? Did you get nervous when your administrators were going to come into the building? Did you get nervous? Did you overplan if you knew they were coming in? Did you stress out? Did you start sweating more? Did you get super excited? Did you get animated? Right? How did you feel when you were in there? And what did your body feel like when your administrator walked in the classroom? What did you think about when he was in there? Were you concentrated on what your kiddos were learning? Or were you concentrated on, did I say the right thing? Where is he at? What's he doing? What are they looking at? Did she notice me do this? Did she hear the great question? Right? Where was your brain going? And then how did you act? Did you act normally? Did your actions change while you were in the classroom? So kind of think about that, and hopefully you kind of got a visual in your mind of how you acted when you were in the classroom and your school leaders came in. Now, I want you to think about, keep that in your mind, switching over, you're a school leader and you're going into classrooms now. How do you feel when you go into classrooms now? What are you thinking about when you go in there? What are you wanting to see? What do you want your teachers to feel like when you're going into your classrooms, right? What do you expect to see from your teachers? How do you expect your teachers to act, right? What's the purpose of your visits? Are you going in for purely evaluations? Are you going in to see feedback? Are you going in to watch a kiddo who maybe is getting tested for an IEP, possibly, or a behavioral plan, or just going in to support them, right? Why are you going in there? And what do you hope to get out of those classroom visits? So kind of think about a situation now as a school leader that you would go in for, and what's the reason behind it, and how are you feeling, and how are you hoping to get out of it, and what are you expecting your teachers to think and feel versus how you felt as a teacher. And as you think about that, is your perception as a school leader and as a teacher the same? Did you, as a teacher, understand why your principal was coming in and you were cool as a cucumber and you just kept going on and you didn't have that error in the loop, right? Your references met everything that was going on and the input and your perceptions were all on tack and you weren't in error? Or are they off a little bit and they're in error? And when your principal came in or your director and you got nervous and you didn't know quite why they were there, and that loop threw you into an error, right? And what you were doing. So the hope is by understanding this perceptual control theory and the loop that everybody goes into, and the fact that we all take actions as our outputs to get ourselves back into reference, that we can think about how we're going to go into classrooms and how we're going to provide feedback to our teachers in order to help them be and balance, right? So we're not throwing them into error as we do that. And one way that we can do that is by planning our classroom visits very intentionally. So as we plan these classroom visits, we want to be super intentional about what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. So before we go into classrooms, we want to make sure we're determining why we're going into those classrooms. What are our look-fors? Are those look-fors aligned to our school-wide goals? Do our teachers know what those school-wide goals are, right? How am I going to provide my teachers feedback? Am I going to meet with them one-on-one after? Am I going to write them an email after? Is it a little note? Maybe I've got a Google survey form that I fill out when I'm in there and it emails them feedback right after, right? But how are you going to provide them that feedback from there? And then how am I going to communicate both of these really important things to my teachers? How are my teachers going to know why I'm coming into the classroom? How are they going to know what those look-fors are? How are they going to know that I'm providing them feedback and what type of feedback I'm going to do? Is this an evaluative type feedback or is this not evaluative observation with just some look-fors of glows and grows of what went well and maybe what could have gone well? So thinking about all of that and having that really clear in our minds as school leaders before we go in is really important. And then planning a way to give that to our teachers and communicate that to them so that their perceptions and their references are the same as ours. But then you've got this flip side, because school leaders, we know that you're not just an instructional leader, you've got a million other things on your plate. You've got a student who maybe's got some health issues and you had to call an ambulance that morning. Or you've got some behavior disruptions and a kiddo ran out the building and we're trying to figure out where he went, right? Or maybe you've got a teacher, 5 teachers who called in sick and you're trying to find subs to cover them, right? You've got a million things on your plate that happen that are outside of your control. So on top of being really intentional about why we're getting into classrooms, we also have to be very intentional about the logistics of actually getting into classrooms, right? We need to schedule that time that we're going to be in classrooms, right? And we need to keep that time sacred. How are we going to protect that time? We need to set expectations for ourselves. How many classrooms am I going to get in per day? How many am I going to be in per week? And setting those expectations for ourselves and how we're going to do that will really help us hold ourselves accountable. And then the third part is, how are we going to hold ourselves accountable? Or do I need an accountability buddy? Do I need a thought partner? Can I hold myself accountable by checking off my list and setting a specific time for it, right? And then as always, it's communicating this back to our teachers. I'm going to try to get into X amount of classrooms during this time frame every day, right? And letting them know so that their perceptions and their reference is the same as yours. So when they come back and start getting compared, it evens and our teachers aren't in error and out of balance. So we want to give you some real time to kind of think about how can we take this new information and really create a plan for us to go into classrooms, right? And so that same document that I put into the chat earlier, I'm going to put in there again as well. And we're going to give you about 7 minutes to go in and just think through, what am I going to do in classrooms? Be intentional about it, right? process what are you going to do in classrooms, how are you going to give back feedback, and how are you going to communicate this to teachers. And then start planning your logistics. Get a plan in place. You guys have time carved out to be here with us today, and the best use of that time that we can do is to plan and help you give you guys time to plan out how you're going to be instructional leaders to your teachers. So again, you can go into breakout rooms if you want to. If you want to talk this through with somebody, you're welcome to do that. Okay. Or if you want to just think through it on your own and set a timer and go into that note catcher, then you can go into there and take notes and kind of plan it out. But we want you guys to take some real time to really think about how can I be intentional and get into classrooms, and how can I use my time and knowledge now of this. I'm going to go back just a few more clicks. There we go. Of perceptual control theory to make sure that my teachers are not out of balance when I go into classrooms. So that when I go into classrooms as a school leader, my teachers don't stress out. They don't feel nervous. They don't start putting on a dog and pony show, but their reference is the same as ours and they stay in balance. So I'm going to put 7 minutes on the clock. You can turn your cameras off. You can join, well, most of them are off anyways, or you can turn it on and let us watch your pretty face while you're working. Or you can join a breakout room if you want to kind of talk through how you're an instructional leader with another teammate to go through that, or just work on your own and take some notes, and we will come back together in 7 minutes. So before I open up the breakout rooms, questions, comments, concerns about how we can use this perceptual to control theory to implement at effective classroom observations and walkthroughs as instructional leaders. Okay, I'm going to open the breakout rooms and I'm going to put 7 minutes on the clock, and I will see you back here shortly. About 30 seconds and then we'll all come back together. All right. Hopefully you guys had some time to really think through and have a few minutes of some intentional time to think about how you can be that instructional leader in your building and how you can intentionally plan out some classroom visits so that you can provide and have a few minutes of each day or each week being that instructional leader to best support your teacher learning and student learning as well. So as you were doing that, I would love if anybody would like to come off and share any thoughts that they had, any insights they had, whether it's about using the perceptual control theory to make sure that our kiddos and our teachers are in reference or in balance as we move through this. Would love to hear that, or any great ideas about how you're going to get into classrooms and kind of use this information to be an instructional leader, and how you and your teachers can stay in balance throughout this process. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of wait time if anybody wants to come off and share. Okay. Well, hopefully thinking through these questions here that you thought through are able to help you see how the perceptual control theory can play into so many different situations. And the fact that, you know, we can't really read each other's minds, but we can infer whether or not we're in balance and whether our teachers are in balance by considering the references of each party, thinking back to your own personal references of when you were in the classroom and how you felt when you were doing observed, for example. And as you kind of go through some of these situations, take in some considerations when planning walkthroughs and keep in mind how you can help teachers stay in balance while being that instructional leader within their system. Hopefully helping us stay out of error and in balance. So that kind of brings us to the close of today. And before we look ahead and to our next session together, are there any lingering thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns that anybody has? Okay. Well, looking forward, we come back together in January, on January 10th, and we are going to focus on creating a need-satisfying school environment by providing feedback to teachers. So we're super excited about this, building upon the science behind the brain and why humans do what they do, and the perceptual control theory and the loop, and bringing that all together into creating that great need-satisfying school environment, which is so challenging, but yet so important for us to do with our schools. Then we'll come back together in March, talk about positions of control and open to learning conversations. And then we'll round out the year with the power of self-evaluation and ending strong with that. So we're super excited for our next sessions with you, but we always love feedback. So if you would, please take the last 2 minutes of our time together to provide us some feedback about what went well and how we can do better. We'd love to apply that feedback. I've also put a link into the chat if that's helpful with that. And with that, I will pass it back to Lisa to close this out, but would love to get your guys' feedback, and thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Katie and Charlie. That was really good information. I appreciate it. All right, I just have a couple of quick things I wanted to share with you before we leave today. If you are planning on putting in an application for a satellite or a large expansion for your school, those will need to be in by November 17th. And also, I just wanted to remind you that our next directors meeting will be Monday, December 11th from 12:30 to 2. And thanks everybody who's still on that came and participated today. We appreciate all the information you brought to us and everything that you've done. And I hope you all have a wonderful month. Thanks. Bye-bye.